If it had been Bernie Sanders running around saying Republicans come out or whatever, socialism, whatever they think is a turnoff, and there was the kind of losses that we saw a month ago, then it would be plastered on every billboard in America that Bernie Sanders, almost lost the House and is a catastrophic risk to the Democratic Party. Yeah, Joe Biden did that. The Lincoln Project, fools were able to extract $70 million out of even more foolish Democrats.
My God.
And the result was that more registered Republicans voted for Donald Trump in 2020 than they did in 2016. And then Joe Biden turned around and has rewarded Republicans, putting them on his transition team, considering them for prime cabinet spots. Meanwhile, the Bernie wing is completely unrepresented in his administration. So that's all to say, to me, that's more of an argument to challenge Democratic power, to challenge Democratic leadership, to show, even if it's performative, I don't care. I don't see that as a slight. I don't see that as a derogatory term, because there is an aspect to politics that is theater that movements like the Tea Party and the right wing have always understood. And I think that even if I can't prove or point necessarily to tangible outcomes, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know what would happen if we were to force the floor vote. But I know what will happen if we don't. And that is that our best case scenario is that in 2 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, we can still be talking about the fight for Medicare for all. Meanwhile, 68,000 people die every year from a lack of health insurance. And who knows what it's about to be, what the results are going to be after this year or two of pandemic. I just am really struggling to see why we wouldn't try to capitalize on this opportunity to lay bare some of the hypocrisy, some of the issues around financing and pharmaceutical money and private health insurance money that we know our media at present isn't going to cover. And so this question still remains for me. Why is it that the DSA hasn't come out in support? What is the downside for the DSA?
Well, I think part of it is also timing, right? Because you got the speaker vote coming up and people are a bit, burned out, the pandemic year, the holidays. So, because we're talking, let me just finish. So
okay,
we're talking about it in the DSA Medicare for All campaign.
Uh-huh.
The DSA Healthcare Workers Collective has folks who are really galvanized by it and are pushing the collective to take a position. Ultimately, the National Political Committee might get it on their agenda. But the timing is such. See, there's also this, from the organizer perspective, what I hear is, we want to put Pelosi on the spot. We share this critique, right, in a fundamental way. We want a which side are you on moment for Medicare for all, because we share the frustration, right, of and just the anger and the sadness of where we are in the pandemic. People are dying in our healthcare system. It sucks. It's just so inadequate, right? And so people feel all that. But they also know that it takes time to do the phone banks and to do the text banks and to build the capacity and to build the demand in such a way where they feel like, yeah, even though the vote is not necessarily going to go our way, we actually put them on the spot. We did something. We made them sweat. We built some capacity. We gained new members. We built some infrastructure. So I think there is a little bit of a logistic thing too. Just to be honest with you, the time frame is tough.
The time frame is tough, but here's my perspective. I'm lucky enough to be able to be home, with my family for the holidays in quarantine, but a lot of people are spending holidays alone. Even though I'm home, I'm an adult and with no children and a house full of childless adults and have all the time in the world to phone bake over the next week. I have all the time in the world to mount whatever pressure campaign exists. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way. So to the extent that anybody in DSA leadership is listening or you have any sway, I think that trying reaps its own rewards.
I still think we haven't really come down on the question of why do it now with Pelosi versus could we create a scenario where when we do healthcare around the pandemic, we really elevate it and do it then.
So help me understand what that would look like. Are there plans in the works to do some other kind of demonstration, sometime in the new year? And what is the hook that we think will enable us to get the kind of media coverage that we would need then as opposed to now?
Well, we think the hook is going to be whatever pandemic healthcare bill emerges, because you still got the problem of the uninsured. You had some monies for hospitals and testing, but the testing money, vaccine money is apparently already said to be inadequate. So there is a belief that that the Biden administration is committed to covering people, right, who in an inadequate way, right, may just be for COVID, or maybe we can expand it. So you hear from some of the congressional leadership that they want to push expanding Medicare to, the uninsured, really everybody, or the Healthcare Emergency Guarantee Act, right? And there is a real kind of activist base that likes the Healthcare Emergency Guarantee Act quite a bit. And so the belief is that can be a vehicle when they do something. Now, the other potential vehicle, which is definitely going to be on the table before the midterms, is the ACA fix, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really a point of maximum leverage, because they cannot fix the ACA without progressive caucus votes. Mm. And the last thing that any self-respecting progressive caucus member should do is to get more subsidies to the insurance industry unless we get real substantive steps to single payer and a floor vote. And what you do is, you know how these bills go. They go to Ed Labor, they go to Ways and Means, they go to Energy and Commerce, and they get marked up. And then they get melded into a version that then gets to the floor through the Rules Committee, and that goes over to the Senate. But the reality is, one of those committees has primary jurisdiction. Guess which one it was or is? It's the one that didn't do a hearing on Medicare for All, Energy and Commerce. Mm. The other committees did. Rules,
in which AOC just got denied handily.
And that is not a coincidence.
Right.
So we got that's how it emerges. It emerges from the committee process. So you can imagine a number of kind of like educational moments, right, or organizing opportunities that culminates in something even big. But very big, right?
Why haven't the squad said anything like that? Because they now, both Rashida Tlaib and AOC have given interviews on this subject. And both of them, when pressed, have said the reason why we don't want to oust Nancy Pelosi is because there's no one to take her place, which I just don't see what that's supposed to mean for the reasons that we, talked about before. I feel like a lot of the frustration in this moment would be mediated, for better or worse, if they were to articulate a time, a place in the future, a plan of action that is in the near future, not this kind of like term length timeline, not 4 or 5 or 10 years from now.
I agree. I think there's a failing on the movement organization side to really develop a strategic campaign. I think that's changing. I think the things we're talking about are going to happen. I think the linkage with the racial justice uprising, I think the corporate campaign against the industry, I think holding electeds, primary and electeds, I think those things are going to happen. But there's also a failure of congressional strategy, and particularly a failure because we knew what was coming. We knew Biden. I mean, he's decided to use Medicare for All as the issue to define himself as not on the left. Mm-hmm. I mean, he uses, I'm not a socialist. I don't support Medicare for All. It's outrageous how it's been used. And it's infuriating.